Welcome to the Abe-Unit show. Time to embark. Let the conversation flow. Faith in Jesus, the guiding force. In every tale, a powerful source. Knowledge drop, inspiring minds. Breaking barriers, the world unwinds. No room for hate, just joy and light. Lifting hearts, taking flight. The Abe-Unit show answers the call. Empowering all, standing tall. Grab your seat, hold on tight. Together we'll journey into the light.
What's going on, everybody? This is your man Abe-Unit, reporting live from the DMV. But you know what? That's enough for me. On today's episode of the Abe-Unit show, I have a special guest in the building. We'll start off with a quick intro before we dive too deep into the show. Let's go!
What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Cellus Hamilton, and you tuned into the Abe-Unit show. You feel me?
Cellus Hamilton, Christian rap artist, author, husband, and father. We'll get into all of that, but first, it is time for the warm-up. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
Artists you would love to work with?
Oof. Would love to work with Jackie Hill Perry.
If you couldn't live in New York or Atlanta, where would you move to?
Man, I would live in LA. I know that means I'm gonna be paying a lot of money, similar to New York, not really having a lot of space for it. But I just love the weather in LA. It's always sunny. It's always great. They're really health conscious. I love LA, so I live in LA for sure.
Okay. Favorite pastor you like listening to?
Oof. Favorite pastor I like listening to? I love listening to Bill Johnson.
Bill Johnson. Okay.
Johnson's
OG.
guy. Yeah.
One word to describe your music.
Honest.
Favorite story in the Bible.
Favorite story in the Bible is when Jesus talks about the parable of the guy who works the vineyard and he hires everybody at all different times, but he pays them all the same amount. That's my favorite story. It's crazy to me.
What's your favorite song from his songbook for the journey?
Favorite song from his songbook. It changes all the time, but right now it's All Alone.
What is your favorite thing about yourself?
Favorite thing about myself. That I am pretty versatile. I think my parents did a good job of making sure that I knew a little bit about a lot of things. So sports, music, educational things and topics. Like I think that I'm well-rounded, versatile.
What's the most surprising feedback you've received about your book, If Jesus Was a Rapper?
Most surprising feedback is that people find my life pretty interesting. They'll read it and they'll be like, hey, okay, like seeing these stories and some of the things that you went through, you went through a lot. So that's some surprising feedback.
How do you stay spiritually grounded on tour?
Spiritually grounded on tour? Bring my wife, if possible. Second way is just use it as a opportunity to discipleship. So I try to bring a couple guys that are younger, newer in their faith with me as well. So everything we're doing on the day to day, whether it's going from venue, whether it's going from hotel, whether it's just the breakfast and the food, that we're using those as opportunities to talk about God and learn how we live out our faith in real practical means. So discipleship and bring my wife.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best advice ever I've received. Simply to remember that my wife is not my enemy. I never knew that. As simple as it is, I never knew that.
Yeah.
But if we arguing, oh, you my enemy now. No, she's not my enemy. Even when we are, that's the best advice I've received.
All right. So now I want to shift a little bit into your background and your music as well. I know that you grew up in Atlanta where music was huge in your household, with your mom being a hip hop artist and Pops also had his own music collection. How much did that influence you to start a music career at such a young age?
And it was everything for me. Getting involved in music is kind of like, how could I not? My mom being so involved, my dad being so involved. You can just imagine that if I didn't like music, I would have probably hated my crib because it was there was so much music going on, and just naturally, you couldn't escape it. Like whatever room you were in, the common space always had music blasting from speakers, and it was kind of like whatever my parents decided to play that day, the whole house had to listen to it. And so I couldn't escape it. It was inevitable that I was going to be involved in music in some kind of way, whether that was merely having a highly opinionated take on music, where it's like I listen to music so much I can tell you, you know, what's dope and all the things that go into it, or whether it was me actually creating it myself. And for me, it happened to be that I was creating it myself. So,
okay.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, how did you know which side you were going to fall on?
Well, I mean, naturally, I think it was just trial and error. Like I joined this AV group at my church, my first church in Atlanta. They had a call to get a couple young men to basically help run sound in the back of the church. And so I'm volunteering to do that like one Sunday a month. I'm one of the youngest guys in there, working with a bunch of like middle schoolers and high schoolers. I'm in elementary. And, you know, these guys on the side, they in the back, they like adjusting the sound levels while the pastor's preaching or while the choir's singing. But then they also making beats. And I'm like, hold on, like this is dope. Like y'all really into this. And that just started him kind of like, you know, back then everything was bootleg, you know what I'm saying? So they burn a copy of their beat program CD. I put it on my laptop. I'm making beats. I'm learning from them. I'm getting free sounds. And it started with me making beats. But then the whole time I'm making beats, my mom is a rapper. She's touring. She's doing her thing. So it just kind of became this thing where it's like, I'm making beats. I'm showing them to my mom. She's talking about how dope they are. And then eventually, you know, I'm seeing her always practice writing her rhymes in the crib and practice performing. And so naturally, one day I plugged my mic up to the laptop and I started recording it.
He said, let's give it a go.
Then when I played it for her and she started telling me, yo, these is dope, and my friends started kind of affirming me, it just kind of came into play from there. So.
Okay. That's awesome. And you did grow up in Atlanta, and I'm sure you couldn't really escape like the music scenery out there as well. And I know you refer to your music as ministry, in which it is, and I absolutely love that. How has like Atlanta mixed with you growing up in the church? How was that influential?
I love that question because I really feel like Atlanta, I grew up in the perfect time to be from Atlanta. Like I grew up in a time where, you know, Atlanta was still in the rap scene from New York City. We had our own sound. We were creating snap music, dance music. A lot of people had a lot of bad things to say about that music, but it was culturally us. And then at the same time, while that's happening in Atlanta, holy hip hop movement is happening, meaning that all of the beginning Christian rap is actually coming out of Atlanta. Like, yeah, there were some people that were doing their thing up in Philly, like Cross Movement and people in New York City. But Atlanta at the same time started having a kind of like a headquarters for what they called holy hip hop at the time. So I'm growing up in the middle of both of these emerging movements. And so not only did that mean music was all around me, but it meant that I was growing up in a time where both were very like, you want to get into it because you see all your friends in it. So naturally, I kind of was able to merge both. I was like, music is supposed to be fun. It's something that's supposed to make everybody want to dance and want to get hyped. And then my church, you know, and people in the parking lot and people like on their way to church, people in the church, shoot, they snapping and leaning and all that kind of stuff. So it's like the church was affirming us because they was like, all right, y'all can do that music, but how about y'all talk about Jesus? So instead of them being, don't do that music at all, cut it off, it's evil, they just instead, hey, if y'all talk about Jesus, y'all can snap and lean in here too. And so all of those spaces around me just actually made me feel like, yo, I can do this. I felt seen. And it just made it easy for me to kind of step into it that way. Okay.
No, that's awesome. And absolutely, in you doing your music, you've achieved such significant success, right? In your career, you've had charting albums, successful national tours. What is it that you attribute this success to? And what if you can also talk about some of the challenges that you've had to face along the way?
Absolutely, bro. Yeah. Well, first, I mean, without being cliche, but it's the honest truth, I attribute all of it to God.
Yeah.
I've always been a very prayerful individual. And so I pray for my next move, my next step. And I feel like the Lord has, for the most part, directed me there's been a couple times where I've tried to move on my own time. I think we all make those mistakes sometimes of jumping into something, but for the most part, I've allowed the Lord to direct my steps. And if He's told me, or led me to go on a tour, or to now share a certain topic or a concept with the world and to take it on the road, then of course He's been able to, he's blessed it because of obedience. I think some of the challenges with that I've seen are that the more that I'm obedient to God and what He tells me to do, the more that I realize that His version of success isn't the numbers. So it's like, I do what God tells me to do, and then I'll be surprised because I'm like, dang, God, I did what you told me to do. I know you told me to do this. And ain't nobody showing up, or ain't nobody responding, or ain't nobody liking it, or I'm getting, a bunch of static or whatever. And I've just been reminded that God's hand on something does not look like affirmation from the world. And so I've had to wrestle with that and realize, dang, every time I'm really doing something God has told me to do, usually people are not excited, they're not buying it, they're not liking it, but I have more peace because I know that He's pleased. So that's one of the challenges that I've had to navigate.
That is incredibly deep, man. Because a lot of the time, especially when we're trying to navigate these spaces, we conflate it, right? Like the things of the world and the things of God. And sometimes we try to step into both, and you outlining it the way that you did, that's absolutely incredible. Now you're also a father, also a husband, like we mentioned earlier. How has it been trying to balance those? And then you're still trying to juggle a career with music and being an author and all of the side projects that you're involved with.
Yeah. I mean, being a husband is incredible. It's something I would never trade. I'm so grateful that the Lord led me into marriage, that I'm with my wife. She, number one, has taken my career to the next level. I always tell her, yo, you upgraded me, because I was doing things real ghetto fabulous, real hood style, real low budget, you know what I'm saying? And I knew how to make things happen with a little bit. My wife knew how to take that little bit and knew how to also put some organization and some like real business model with it and make it real professional. So I'm really grateful. But I think that, and then becoming a father, made me realize that those things that I always was able to do with 100% focus now had to take a back seat to my role as a husband and a father. So like, growing up being a child rapper from 8 years old all the way up to what I am now, I never had to share my passion for music with anything else. When you're a kid and you don't have a family, and then you're a teenager and you don't have a family, and you're a young adult and you don't have a family, if you want to go on a tour and you want to always be gone from home, and you want to be in every city, and you want to be at every function, and you want to be online all night, shooting out press releases and recording all night long, not getting no sleep, you can do that. But then it's like, I got married, and now my wife's like, no, you're not going to record all night. We're going to bed together. No, you're not going to be gone all the time. Like, okay, I know you want to do a show, tonight, but no, we need to go on date night. And it's like, I had to learn that, these things are going to have to take a back seat to what now becomes my first ministry, which is my wife, my son. And so that's a learning process. It has been difficult for me because I think I started so young. And so I'm still at times wrestling with the balance of it. Been growing and getting a lot better at it, but that's one of the things that I've been trying to navigate. And now that I've been figuring out the time, it's been helping me actually make better use of my time. So I've been making more music, and God's been good.
That's awesome, man. And I don't feel like there is any like premarital counseling or information that you can get. Like, it's the real experience that allows you to see that, right?
Yeah, real experience on the go. I never would have known that before you plan a tour, you have to actually check in with your wife and make sure that she wants to go on tour at that time.
Yeah.
And just be like, we going on tour. Come on. You work from home. You can do it on the road. Like, and I had to learn those lessons the hard way. And I'm just grateful that no lessons are wasted. Even though we've had some bumps in the road career-wise, I'm grateful that I've learned them, and that me and my wife and my family were better because of the lessons we've learned. And I'm grateful that we're able to actually do this together. I'm grateful that she supports me being a rapper, that she supports my passions and my dreams. And it's just beautiful. So,
Yeah. No, that's amazing, man. Now you have all these experiences, and there are other aspiring Christian artists or just artists in general that are up and coming. What advice would you give them on how to make their mark on this industry?
yeah. Biggest advice that I would give to other Christian artists and people trying to break through in this industry is do not focus so much on trying to be seen by other people, particularly other artists.
Mm-hmm.
I spent so many years trying to get some of the top Christian rappers and entertainers and people who was killing it to know my name and to see me and to recognize me and see that I was killing it too. And you're never really doing what you're supposed to be doing for God when you're focused on trying to get other people to see you. And so I spent a lot of energy being places that I shouldn't have been. You know what I'm saying? Doing things for attention that wasn't exactly what God wanted me to do. And I'm finally now at the place where I'm comfortable in my own skin, you know, and by God's grace, as I've stopped trying to get people to see me, God has allowed some people to become friends and some people to become allies along the way. But I've realized that God's called my journey to be a little different than I think a lot of other Christian artists. And everybody has their own specific path. And I was always thinking that, oh, if this is how it looks for them, then this is how God must want it to look for me. And that's not true. And God had to show me the reason I'm not allowing you to connect with certain people that you really love and want to connect with is because I want you somewhere different. I can't have all of my Christian soldiers and all my people who are working for me in one spot grouped up. There's a whole world out here that needs to be touched by. And so I would be mad when God wouldn't allow me to be in the same rooms with certain people and be booked for the same shows and festivals and concerts. But I've grown and matured to realize that God has me on a different path and that I can celebrate them and be excited and happy for them while at the same time being confident that my lane and my race looks a little different.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It takes incredible amount of maturity to even be able to put all of that together. And that's, to your point, another thing that I learned is, let's say that you got this huge cosign from a huge Christian artist, and then now you might start attributing that success to said person.
Yeah.
Now you're like, okay, this is really God, and this is where he's taking me. So, and you're able to give all of the glory to him. And it's absolutely, absolutely wonderful, man.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest blessings that I can point to God in his glory is that I've never had a cosign. Like, I've had people, you know, acknowledge me, but still to this day, I think, yeah, I can only say that God has, he's positioned me where I am. And I think the longevity of how he's had me start as a young child, that I wasn't in the limelight with a lot of mistakes that I made young.
Right.
Because, you know, if things that I did when I was young, things that I did and got on stage and said, yeah, this is God, and it wasn't God. A lot of people don't have to know about those stories because they have 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, and now I'm at an age. I'm glad that I did that back before social media was popping. I'm glad I said that, you know, so God has been good to keep me in.
That's incredible. That's his protection.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's awesome, man. I want to shift into another one of your passion projects. If Jesus Was a Rapper. Yeah. This is a book that you authored and released in 2021. One of the dope things that I read in there was, you said that I believe seeking to see Jesus in our modern context is extremely valuable. And that resonated with me because a lot of the times the references to like agriculture or other cultural references might not, or they might be difficult to comprehend. So I love when preachers or like evangelists, they use present day examples and principles to explain these things. So really appreciate you for throwing that out there. I want to know, what was the thought and creative process of writing the actual book?
Yeah, man. Incredible question. So that book, I always tell people it's my life's work. Being someone that's been involved in hip hop pretty much my whole life. It's the way I think, it's the way I breathe, it's the way I process life. I've always read the Bible with a hip hop lens. when I read the Bible, I have so many raps and verses in my head from Christian artists, secular rappers, um, just songs that I grew up on that I naturally look at the world through hip hop. And so reading the Bible with that lens, you can't help but see that, man, Jesus seemed like a rapper. Like the way he talked in parables, the way that he says things, the kingdom is like a mustard seed. Like that's a bar right there. Like, and I started realizing, like, man, how come every time I read the Bible, I see Jesus like that hip hop artist that doesn't get no love from, you know, people who don't like hip hop. Like, I see him as being that person who got all the bars and he's really giving us, he's really spitting, he's really talking that talk, but don't nobody respect him and don't nobody really see what he's really saying. But he's the rawest at it. He loves the hardest. Like, and I just think that's just how I saw the Bible. That's how I saw Jesus. And naturally that lens just gave me an inspiration to want to create a book that spoke to that and that highlighted that. So that was the motivation behind that book. And then, of course, inserting my story in there and my examples as well was kind of like just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's such a, like, to me, it's such a fresh perspective, because we know the Holy Spirit is a teacher, right? And we don't all learn the same way. And then for you to see it the way that you are seeing it, that opens up a whole different viewpoint for other people that might not understand the Bible because they don't know how to read it. So now this is revelation for a lot of people that are we're struggling to read the Bible or starting to get into the Bible. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to readers who are intrigued by the premise of the book, right, but maybe hesitant to engage with it due to maybe preconceived notions or biases? Because you hear Jesus rapper, I don't know if I should touch that.
Yeah, it's like I'm mixing two things that are already controversial. Even though hip hop's the most popular genre in the world, there's still a lot of people that feel like hip hop should never be connected with Jesus because of all the negative things they see about hip hop. And then I'm also talking about Jesus, and we already know how controversial that is. A lot of people is like they don't want nothing to do with Jesus. So I'm mixing two things that just are hot red buttons for everybody. And I experienced that, and I think that's one of the reasons why my book has had to have the success in the streets that it's had and not online. Like, my book in reality hasn't done well online. Shortly before this interview, I was on the subways in New York City again, selling my books to people and engaging with people and getting the traction that way. But to answer your question, I think that I would encourage people to let their guard down and understand that whichever one of these you are cool with, if you're cool and you're in love with Jesus, then give the book a chance because of him. Or if you don't actually care for Jesus at all, but you love hip hop, give the book a chance because of that. Whichever entry point you find, I have attempted to give you a merging point where you'll see not only the connection between Jesus and hip hop, but ultimately that, like I say, that you will fall in love with him and see him as your favorite rapper as well. So that's my advice for people entering into that book.
They read the book by the end of it, or what is it that you want people to get out of it?
Yeah. So by the end of the book, my goal, and I think I wrestle with this, maybe this is because I am a little bit of a perfectionist, but I often tell myself, man, if I could go back today and write this book, it'd be a whole different book. Like, I wouldn't have hardly anything that I put in. But my goal when you read it is for you to have an introduction to some of the things about hip hop and about Christianity that you didn't know. I imagine that the person who's attracted to the book the most will be someone who's maybe struggled with Christianity being a white man's religion. I'd also imagine that someone who picks up the book would be someone who maybe wants to know that, okay, how can this author, Cellus Hamilton, say all these things about Jesus being a rapper? Like, I ain't even heard of him. So what kind of expert is he, and why should I trust his voice? So I put my story in it and a little bit about myself so that people can say, all right, I think maybe I can trust him because he's been doing it long enough. He might know what he's talking about. And I see his own journey with Jesus. And I also see how it does make sense that Jesus is a rapper. So that's what I hope they get, is that there is a history of hip hop. There's a history of Jesus that brings me to this meeting point between me and the reader of the book that allows me to maybe be trusted to present Jesus to you in a way that you've never seen.
Yeah. And inside the book, we do learn that you got saved at the age of 5.
Yeah.
Right. And I also thought it was interesting that you described in your book that that was one of the 2 times where you felt like you couldn't walk. And then the other time being when you proposed. Why do you think those moments were so significant?
They were significant because I was entering into relationships that would change my life forever.
Yeah.
I knew at that young age that if I walked down to the altar and allow my heart to say yes to Jesus, this means that who I was before I came here has to change. And even though, like, at that age, you know, I wasn't doing nothing crazy that other little kids wasn't doing, but I knew that this relationship was that important, that it was that life-changing, that it was that major. And then the same thing with my wedding day. Like, I knew as well that moment would mean that there's a complete change, there's a complete shift, there's a complete newness that I'm stepping into, and that there is no looking back. And so I think me being paralyzed to the fact that my feet couldn't move forward and I felt glued to the floor was because I knew how big the weight of those decisions were. And I still to this day say both of those decisions were hands down the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And they are a big reason of where I am today. So,
yeah. 2 covenants, right?
2 covenants, till death, in it 100% forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about you being a father a little bit as well. You do have a baby boy. How do you manage like fatherhood? Again, like we talked a little bit earlier about you being a husband and having to figure out those balances. Now you throw a child into the mix. How does that shift?
Man, balancing fatherhood is a challenge in itself, and I think it correlates deeply with the age of your child. You know what I'm saying? My son now, he's 2 going on 3. He's in a very active stage of life. You might hear him in the background. You know what I'm saying? He's learning how to speak. He's learning how to express himself. He's gaining more confidence in his personality. And so I'm having to learn that some of the ways that I was parented, as great as they were, won't necessarily work for my particular child because God has given me a unique individual. And I'm being challenged to realize that, you know, if he's crying or whining, I shouldn't always just rush to tell him to stop crying and to just, you know, be a big boy, but I should seek to be better at figuring out what's going on with him and kind of like why he's crying or what he's processing. And so all of those things are really hard for me. I can be very impatient. I can be very, insensitive. And I think God has been teaching me how to be more caring, how to be more gentle, how to trust my wife, and how to not think that she's crazy if she picks him up. And like, no, you don't need to hold him right now. Like all those things, the Lord is teaching me that I don't know it all, that my way is not the only way. And I think it's just changing me, man. It's changing me. And then we have a daughter, Lord willing. We've been speaking it. My wife is like, stop telling everybody we having a daughter. We don't know. We don't know what we're having, but we would love. We're gonna be grateful for whatever God gives us, of course. But we would love a daughter this time around. And given that that's about to happen in 3 months when we're due, we'll have two babies, a toddler and then a newborn. So I'm just stepping into all the challenges that God has given me in this season, learning a lot about myself. And then all my dad friends and homies are telling me, man, if you do have a girl, it's going to make you super soft. It's going to change you. So I'm ready for it all.
Ready for it all.
Yeah.
Just hearing you talk, this little time that I've had an opportunity to spend with you, man, it's just feel like so much wisdom that is just like really flowing out of you. I would say it is safe to say that we are ready for book number 2, man. Uh, any announcements that you want to share with us?
Yo, that's so
Anything
crazy.
in the works?
That's so crazy that you say that. I'm actually writing book number 2 right now. I've been writing it for a few weeks.
Okay.
And the Lord has been giving me just a lot to say in this book. I feel like the first book had to come before this one, not only to, tell a little bit of my story and kind of the lens and how I see the world in my journey with Jesus. But this book is completely different. It's not about hip hop at all. Though I think I'm still writing it, from my perspective, but it's so new, maybe I can't fully disclose it yet. But what I will say, book number 2 is on the way.
Okay.
I'm very excited about it, and my plan is that it will release later this year. So we are working. I'm writing crazy. And then one other announcement that I will say is I've been doing a 52-week challenge.
Okay.
I've been dropping a song every Friday since 2024 began. Last Friday that just passed was 24th week straight. And so these are not old songs. I'm making a new song every week.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask you. It's like, what is the challenge that is associated with?
These are not songs that I've got piled up somewhere that I never released. These are new songs. Each week, I'm trying to make it. I don't have nothing ready for this week.
Okay.
I'm not ready yet, but I will. And God's been good to allow me each week to have something for the people, and the response has been great. So 52-week challenge is what I'm doing. New book on the way, and God is just faithful, man. New baby on the way.
Amen to that, man. More abundance, man. More testimonies for you coming up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like last question, like to just, I don't want to say sum it all up, but I know you've had your journey, you've had your ups and downs, whether it's family related, whether it's career. What specific challenges or something that you can pinpoint to, like, hey, this is something that I needed to get over in order to be here? Is there like something that sticks out the most to you?
Specific challenges that I needed to get over in order to be here. Man, I needed to learn that the Lord wants me to not be attached to any accolades or any accomplishments. So much to the point where I make it a point every day to think through any compliment or any good thing that someone gave me or said to me, and to thank God for it, so that I don't let the day end with having any kind of crown of my own. And I think that that's changed the way that I walk into rooms. It's changed the way that I show up. I think you can hear it in my music now. Like, there was a time when everything I created had like a braggadocious, boastful. And I think part of it was I used to be like, I used to have pastors and older people be like, man, you still kind of cocky in your music. Like, God is still working on you. And I used to sit here and tell them, like, no, that's hip hop. Like, that ain't me. That's hip hop. Like,
I was going to say, that's the culture.
Yeah, I used to tell them that's the culture. And while I do still think that hip hop has a bit of that, I'm confident in who I am, I do think I've allowed myself to give more way to the disposition of Christ. And that as long as I thank him daily for everything he's given me, if someone tells me or comments on a post, yo, I love this new song, or you snapped, best believe at night I'm trying to, every single night, Lord, thank you for that comment. Thank you for that compliment. Thank you for someone walking past me in the city saying, yo, I like your shirt. Lord, I don't want to go to sleep with any of these things that are from you being potentially things that can go to my head and think that they're from anywhere else but you. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been a game changer. And I think that's a challenge that I've leaned into, and I think it's coming through in the way that I carry myself.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, man. It has been an honor and a privilege. I can't wait to share this with every single person that's going to hear this. Cellus Hamilton. Before I actually wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity. If there's anything that you haven't had a chance to get off your chest that you wanted to, or something that we didn't cover, I wanted to make room for that.
Thank you, man. Well, even before I share my final thoughts, man, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for this conversation and just giving me a space to kind of answer these questions and share my heart. It really means a lot. I love these opportunities. One thing that I think I'll leave the people with is that, man, the Lord deeply desires for many people to be saved. And that means that the ways that he draws people are not in our control, but his heart is that many would be saved and many would come to him and many would know who he is. And that I just would want to encourage the people and any person listening who identifies themselves as a believer, that the more that we trust God and let go of our sense of control of how he wants to save people and bring people to himself, I think it's the better that we posture ourselves to be in line with being a witness and a representative of his work and his ministry. I've had to be very cool with praying for people, sharing the gospel, and having people in that moment just be like, man, I don't want to hear none of that. I had to be cool with knowing I was obedient and I'm not going to carry any more burden of feeling like it's my job to save people, as long as I'm doing every day the small things that God is telling me to do. So that's the thing I just felt like I wanted to share, is that God wants to save a lot of people and he will save a lot of people. And we're not in control of how or when he does it. Yeah. Let's learn to be okay with that and trust him, because he knows what he's doing. So that's what I'll leave people with.
Yeah, you're just out here planting as many seeds as possible.
Absolutely. That's our job. That's our job.
That's awesome. Thanks again, man. Appreciate you.